Hello and welcome. My name is Jason Murray. I'm a collaboration systems engineer at Cisco, and in this video I'm going to cover the installation and configuration of the BE6K and the BE7K because they're basically the same system, how they're set up. So primarily the configuration is going to be done through the Cisco Prime Collaboration Provisioning, or PCP 10.5. The BE6K has definitely come a long way since I made my very first videos. I think on version 8. In fact, there wasn't even a BE6K then, or a BE7K then. So let's go ahead and get started, and let's talk about a little bit about how this lab's set up and what I'm going to be doing, and then let's get into the configuration. Alright, so since my last video, I've actually moved into another position at Cisco, working in a place called DCloud. That's kind of why I haven't been making too many videos. I've been kind of in transition and doing things like that. But if you don't know what DCloud is, let me give you a little quick summary on what it is. So a DCloud is a system that's housed in 3 data centers. There's one in America, North America, and there's one in Europe, and there's one in Asia. It's actually to enable Cisco partners and employees to demo Cisco products, and it's not just collaboration like I have here. It's it's data center, it's security, service provider, etc. Pretty much everything that's in Cisco's portfolio, there's some kind of demo or maybe a lab on the subject. So just recently they started adding labs like this one into DCloud, so it's there right now. So unfortunately, it's not open to everyone just yet, but if you are a Cisco partner or you're an employee, you can go to dcloud.cisco.com and log in with your cisco.com login. And then you can spin up this very same lab that I'm about to go through, this hands-on lab here, or a wide range of different demos and labs, across the board of what Cisco, provides and sells. So you can go through it anytime you want, 24/7, 365 days a year. So I encourage you, if you are a partner or you are an employee, you can go take a look at it. I'm sure you'll find it very useful at some point in spinning up and either demoing or whatever, or just learning about Cisco products. So let's go ahead and let's get through, and let's go to the next one, and we'll talk about what we're going to be covering in this lab. Alright, so this is the topology of the lab that I'm going to go through and set up. Everything is pretty much at base, so everything's been installed for you. So we're going to take it from installation and then configure it till we have a fully working system. So we've got Communications Manager, we've got IM and Presence, Unity Connection. They're all at 10.5. And then we're going to use the Prime Collaboration Provisioning server to provision all those applications. So it's going to be a pretty quick setup. There's nothing really too much that you're going to manually have to do because Prime Collab Provisioning PCP will do it all for you. So we're also going to kind of touch on how to deploy your virtual machines, because everything's on an ESXi server. So we're going to have to deploy a virtual machine. So I'll cover that real quick. And then we've got a couple workstations. We've got DNS, of course, and then we've got Exchange. We won't really touch much on that, but Part 2, we just recently added the telepresence conductor and telepresence servers. So we're going to talk about conferencing, not in this video, but I'm going to have a part 2, and we'll actually cover that part of configuring telepresence conductor and server and get conferencing up. So ad hoc and rendezvous conferencing. So we're going to talk about that. So that's what the lab is, and this is what we're going to be covering in this video. Alright, so now we're logged in to the workstation that's within the lab environment, and what we're going to do first is we're going to do an installation or show you how to deploy a virtual machine, because all these applications in a BE6K is basically on an ESXi server, and every application's in a virtual machine. So we've already installed the ESXi server, and there's plenty of how-to videos on doing that, so we've done that already. So we're going to connect into that using the vSphere client. So we usually use the root username and password. I know we're using lab root in here, but usually it's root unless you've created another user to log in. So we're going to click OK or log in and get into the system. And we'll maximize this screen so we can see it a little bit better. So this is the system, and it's been set up with a name. And what we're going to do is kind of take a look at the storage. So when you get a BE6K, there's already going to be preloaded software onto the particular system. So in this one, I only really have the Communications Manager, Unity Connection, ISO, but this is what it's kind of going to look like. You're going to see an ISO folder. You're going to see multiple folders under here that have your ISOs in it that you're going to be booting off. Your VMs are going to be booting off of, so you attach those there. You also see the virtual machine templates loaded onto the data store. So this comes straight out of the factory. You'll have all the software you need to boot off, boot off of these ISOs to install your virtual machines, as well as the templates. The OVA templates will be there as well. You'll have to download those to your desktop first, and then deploy those like we're about to do. So once you have those on your desktop, you're going to go File, Deploy OVA Template, and then what you're going to do is you're going to browse to those templates that you've downloaded. It has to be some kind of local file system like on your desktop or a file share or something like that. So you're going to download those first. You can't deploy them. So I'm going to pick this one here on my desktop. This is just for Communications Manager. Basically all the VMs are pretty much the similar fashion of how you do it. Deploy the template and then answer a few questions on deployment. So this kind of gives you an overview. We're going to give it a name. I'm just going to leave it as default right now. Name it whatever you want in there. So we're going to keep it as this, and then you've got different OVAs have different settings. So in this particular one, Communications Manager, it gives you different settings, and really, the BE6K, it has the settings in here, and then if you're doing a 7K, you could choose pretty much any one of these because there's really no limitation on a 7K, how big you can get. But it's basically just assigning different CPUs and such. So thick provisioning is definitely something that you're going to do in production in this lab just to save on space. We're going to do thin provisioning, but when you're doing it for real, you're going to want to do thick provisioning. We hit next, and then that's pretty much it on deploying. So everything's good to go. We're going to hit finish, and it's going to deploy. All right, we'll hit close on that and then expand the server. Now we can see the VM that we just deployed has the name there. Since we didn't change it as the default. So we're going to right click on it, hit edit settings, because we're going to attach the ISO that we showed earlier on the data store. And you do that by selecting the CD DVD drive, select the radial here. Of course, you want to make sure that you want to hit connect at power on because it won't boot off anything. So hit browse. We're going to choose our data store. Of course, go in the ISO folder and then CUCM and CUCC. So Unity Connection and Communications Manager on the same disk. And here's our bootable disk, and we're going to make sure that it boots off of that, making sure that we say connect at power on. If you don't do that, it's not going to boot off anything. So right click on it, hit power on, and this little green button is going to come up. And now what we can do is click this console button and pop up a window that we can see what's going on. And now we can tell it's actually doing some booting. It's booting off of that ISO that we attached. And if you don't see anything going on here, make sure that the ISO is bootable, which if you bought a BE6K, it will be. And make sure that you check that box connected at power on. All right, so it's come up, and we're not really going to do any installation from here. You'd go through and answer the normal questions on doing installs. I just want to kind of give you an example of how to deploy a VM. The rest of the thing is just pretty much the same. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to log into Communications Manager and start the services. Since it's brand new installation, no services are started. So we're going to go to the Unified Serviceability page and log on to that and start up our services that we're going to need to run our system. So we're going to log on here, and then what we're going to do is go to the Tools menu and then Service Activation. Once that page loads, we're going to choose our server. If we have multiple servers, we have the I am a present server. That's also kind of like a subscriber as well, so we have that option. But we're going to choose Communications Manager and check some services off here. In Presence, you can go in and do the same thing. We're just going to do the ones for Communications Manager in here. So we're just going to choose some ones that we're going to need for this. So of course, Call Manager, CTI. We're going to need TFTP for our phones to register. We've got, we're going to use self-provisioning in this lab, so we're going to need to turn the self-provisioning service on. Of course, you need Axle, bulk provisioning if you want to do some bulk provisioning, and then Cisco directory sync, which syncs with LDAP and to get your users in. So we're going to hit save, hit OK, and this is going to take a while to start the services. So what we're going to do in the meantime is go in and license the system, license Communications Manager, and license Unity Connection as well. So we're going to go to the Prime License Manager. It's changed since Enterprise License Manager. It used to be Enterprise License Manager. Now it's Prime License Manager. Kind of keep on the whole Prime naming convention. So we're going to do this on the one that is on Communications Manager. So Prime License Manager is actually installed within the Communications Manager's VM. But with the BE6K, that's kind of where they want you to do, because if you install another VM, you're taking up your VM count. So this one, we're just going to use the Communications Manager Prime License service that's on it already. Like I said, you could have a separate one if you wanted, or you could use the one on Unity Connection. But we're going to go ahead and use the one that is on Communications Manager instead. So I'm going to log on here. All right, so we're going to let this page load up. And this is Prime License Manager. Like I said before, it used to be ELM in version 9. Now version 10 is Prime License Manager. So what we're going to do is we're going to add the product instances, or the servers that actually get licensed by Prime License Manager, which is Communications Manager and Unity Connection. So click to add. We're going to choose the correct product type, which is Unified CM for Communications Manager. And then we're going to put in the IP address. You can put the host name if you want to use DNS. You can do that. If you have DNS set up, and then the OS admin password and username. We're going to test it. Of course, you can hit OK, and if you got it wrong, it'll tell you, but testing it, you can make sure that it's good. So we're going to click OK, successfully connected. So we're going to hit OK. We're going to hit add one more time, and we're going to add the Unity Connection server. So got to make sure that we choose the correct product type. This case is going to be Unity Connection. Again, IP address or host name, whatever you want to put in there, whatever works. And then the OS administration username and password. And then we're not going to test. We're just going to click OK. And I feel confident that my typing abilities is going to work, and it did. It's successfully connected. We can hit the synchronize now, and then we can tell the status says demo licenses. So these are freshly installed. They will expire at a certain point, so we need to put licenses on the system. So we're going to go licenses, then fulfillment. All right, so there's a number of different ways you can do licensing, and we're going to show you a few here. And then we'll show you the way that we're going to do it. So you can do fulfill licenses from pack. So if you have a pack number, you can put that information in there, and then hit next and go through the different retrieval of your licenses. You can also retrieve fulfilled licenses already by using your Cisco.com username and password, and let it connect into Cisco and retrieve those licenses out. So you can do that. Or you could do it the manual, kind of a manual process, and generate a license request. And what you're going to do is you're going to copy this information out to a notepad, save it, and then what you're going to do is go to the registration site and upload that to the site, and then it's going to generate a key for you, or whatever. It's based on your licensing, and then you're going to save it down, and then you're going to get a file sent to you in order to install. So this is the way we're going to do it. We've already done this already, so we've got a license file, so we're going to close that out, and what you would do after you got the file is click Other, and then Fulfill License from a File. Once this page comes up, you're going to browse to that file. It's usually, you can put it on your desktop, wherever it is, and basically it's a long string of numbers ending in a .bin file. That's what you're going to upload. So we're going to choose that, click Install. Takes a few seconds, and then what it's going to do is going to install and come up with a successful license fulfillment here. Now that we have it, we're going to close out the box, and then what we can do is look at the product instances again and check them out, and we see that it says the status of synchronization successful. And you can also kind of look at your usage and see what you're using. Right now we're not using anything right now, so we have all of them available. We've got 50 licenses, 20 cool licenses, cool professional messaging. So we've got all those in there. You can do a chart view. You can look at the history. So there's different little things you can do with the Prime License Manager, and look at what you have installed after we start adding users and stuff. Alright, so now that we have the licenses installed, we're going to go ahead and start provisioning our systems. So we're going to do that by going to the Prime Collaboration Provisioning application and logging in as global admin, which is a default user that gets created at install. So global admin and whatever password you decided to make. So we're going to hit login. Alright, so we're going to log in here, and we're in the page. Now what we're going to do is, what I'm going to use is use the new feature that came with 10.5 PCP, and that's the Getting Started wizard. And basically what that does is you run through a series of questions and you fill out the information, and it will push all the configuration out to your 3 applications: your Communications Manager, your Unity Connection, and your IM Presence server. So it's a real quick way of getting the system up and running, and that's what we're going to use to set the BE6K up. So we're going to close out this Getting Started little pop-up, and then to get the wizard started, we're going to go to Design and Getting Started Wizard. And what's going to happen is it's going to pop up a new screen, the Getting Started with Prime Collaboration Provisioning, and it gives you some information here, what it's going to do, install, make sure that you do all these things, make sure that all those check marks are good to go, install your systems. Of course, you're going to have them installed, start your services. If you got LDAP, make sure you've got that configured correctly. And if you have existing configuration, you can also upload that. But since this is brand new and this is the first time we've run through this on this system, we don't have any backup configuration. So we're just going to go ahead and hit begin and get this thing started. So it's got some pre-configuration stuff in here. We're not going to use most of this. We're just going to go ahead and put in a name, put the IP address of the server, Communications Manager, and it won't let you actually go any further, or you can't save and continue until you test each server out that you configured. So we're going to test it. Usually takes pretty quick amount of time to do a test. So it will make you do that every time you start the configuration or start filling out these boxes for each server. The save and continue button will gray out, and you can't actually click it until you hit test config. So fill out your information. Unity Connection asks you for the username and password and the OS administrator username and password. This takes quite a bit of time, but this is 1.5 minutes to test the OS administration part. But being that we're going to go ahead and kind of fast forward through, we're going to go ahead and get this thing quickly done, so you don't have to sit here for a minute and a half watching this spin. And a very quick minute and a half, it's completed. And then we've got also a configuration we can do for an Exchange server. Like you said, showed in the topology, there is an Exchange server, so we're going to configure that information here. There's no test button or anything with the Exchange server, but we can put the information in. And then we also have a IM and Presence server, so we're going to configure that as well. Again, you can't go any further until you hit that test configuration button and get a complete check mark, green check mark for that. So it doesn't take very long for the communication or the cup IM and Presence to go. So we're good to go here, and we're going to hit save and continue, and then it's going to go through and add the devices, integrate them. It doesn't completely push everything out, but it will get it ready in the system for the last step at the end and actually push all your configuration out. So it also does a check for previous configuration. You can't run this wizard on already installed systems that already has configuration. If you do have that, you can't run configuration. This is only for greenfield, very new, brand new system. And you can see it's successfully installed all 3 servers. And the next thing we're going to do is set up a domain, basically covering your system. So domain, you think of Windows domain and stuff. It's not quite exactly the same as that. It's just kind of a collection of users, service areas that you're going to apply this configuration to. There's also a dial pattern. This is something new as well. You can actually have it install a template, a dial plan template, and you can download it as well and to kind of get an example of what the dial pattern is. But we've got that already on our desktop, so we're going to click Browse and find it on our desktop, which is in this folder here. So we've got a PCP dial plan. And if you're kind of curious of what it actually looks like, let's take a look at the actual file that I'm installing. It's a text file. It's a CSV kind of a text file. So we're going to open it up right here, and it's basically just got a different order types, user IDs, and in a special format for PCP. So this is something, you know, just straight off of the server, and nothing special, nothing I created, just, you know, blank template there. So we're going to use that. We're going to click upload very quickly, check mark. We're going to hit save and continue, and move on with the rest of the configuration. Now it's going to create the domain, and now we can go ahead and get into a little bit of the service area. So these are like special areas that you apply only certain configuration to. So maybe you know, service area Richardson, or you know, for this example, it's just maybe a site. Maybe you have different configurations per site. So that's kind of like a service area. You consider maybe a building, or maybe like I said, different geographical areas, whatever you consider that all have the same configuration. So not everybody in the whole company may not have the same configuration. So fill up some of this config. It does have some configuration kind of dial plan in here, directory numbers. We could use that, or we could just delete it, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to base it on what we have in the lab here. So we're going to click add new. Of course, the prefix comes from that site code up there. If you want to use that, you can, but in this example, or in this in the directory we have, we've got E164 dialing. So we're going to put in the first number, 4 digits, from 6001 to 6500. We're going to click save under here, and that's going to be any new users that's going to pull from that pool of numbers right there. So anything between 6001 and 6500, any new users created with PCP will be given one of those numbers if you do an automatic configuration. So save and continue. It's creating the service areas, goes through and does all the back end stuff. So it's preparing to do the final push at the end. Alright, so next thing is manual service provisioning. So this is actually what you're going to be pushing. The PCP administrator, when they create a new user, and they put them in as an employee type, these are the things that it's going to give them to be able to do a configuration. So by default, you could only configure 2 phones, a few services, a couple service bundles. So in order to give them more options for the employee service type, for the manual service provisioning, we're going to hit this down arrow button here, and we're going to choose a couple phones. It's kind of showing kind of funky with the numbering here. I don't know what's going on with that, but in any case, we can use this search button. It does a lot. It makes it a lot easier than trying to scroll down this list. So if we type 88, it will pull up all of the phones with just 88 in it. So we can check all these boxes, and then what we'll do is we'll click OK. If you try to do a search and on other phones and try to check those, it will only do the last ones you check. So you have to do the check marks, hit OK, and then hit the down arrow button again to search for new phones. So we're going to add the DX line, DX650, 70, 80, and then we're going to go ahead and click OK. So as we're checking the boxes, we're going to hit OK. So we'll do a search for each phone type. We're also going to do Jabber. We're going to give them the ability to give Jabber access for like Android, iPhone, tablet, and desktop, and that's we're going to give that there. As far as the services go, by default, endpoint, line, and voicemail, we want to make sure that employees they can assign anything to the employees. I mean, if you leave any box unchecked, then when they go to configure a user, then that option is not going to show when they try to configure it. So you can kind of limit, between employees, managers, whatever. But I don't care really on this part, so we're just going to give all the check boxes and say OK. And then looks good. Everything's good to go here. And we're going to hit save and continue. So let's spin in, and now we can do the automatic service provisioning, which is something kind of nice to be able to do. You can give your users the ability to self-provision their own endpoint. So you give them a phone, it it auto registers, and then you hit a speed dial and it goes in, and you could put your service provisioning ID number in there, and it will auto provision your phone with your line and everything. You don't have to go in and manually configure everyone's phone now. So this is some numbers that they're going to do. You could do a default endpoint if you wanted to for every user that gets auto provisioned, but we're going to use the self provisioning using universal device templates and universal line templates and communications manager. So you can give the maximum amount of number of endpoints. We could say 5 here. Of course, this is the number that they're going to dial to dial into the self provisioning, and then auto provisioning or auto registration. Those are the numbers it's going to give the phone. So a number of different things you can automatically configure when you import users. And first one we're going to look at is the line template. So you can go in here and you'll have to scroll down. You can use certain codes that you can look in the administrator guide. It'll tell you what exactly codes you can use. This is first name, last name. This is the format. If you want to automatically pull it from Active Directory, it will configure the first name and last name in there. You can also put that in the line text label, so whatever shows up on the phone, on the actual phone device, it will show this here. So first name, last name. You can put, maybe their directory number or whatever. So we're going to hit save on there. So that's the line configuration. We're also going to do self-provisioning of single number reach. So everybody's going to have a single number reach number. I'm a presence, access, voicemail. We're going to give everybody voicemail access. So when they import in, it's going to create a voicemail box for each user that you import. And there's certain things on this particular system that you can configure for voicemail. You can see all the different settings. You can auto provision to every user that's imported. So things like active schedule, you can just set everybody to have all hours, or you can do a specific schedule for everybody. Set self-enrollment at next login, so we can uncheck that just so people don't have to do that in the lab to answer the questions. And you can also do things like the class of service, so it'll pull that from your Unity connection box, whatever you configure for that, the class of service there. So we'll hit save, and it's going to save the data for the voicemail section. There's some other things like you can do extension, mobility, access if you want. You can also do Jabber. So your default Jabber, whatever it configures, it will configure a Jabber device, and you can choose the default type. And that one we're going to choose to be Jabber with desktop. So everybody's going to get a Jabber for desktop client. Not everybody might not have an iPhone or whatever, so we won't use that default. So save and continue. Again, we've got LDAP, we've got Active Directory in this lab, so it's going to pull in the users from that. So we're going to configure those particular different configuration type items. Admin distinguished name. Usually, like in Communications Manager, you can put administrator at whatever. It likes the full path in this particular box. So go into Active Directory and put the full path, not just the username at whatever your domain is. So user search base. Your search base is where you're going to go, what folder or what OU you're going to go to in Active Directory to go into and pull users out of. So whatever directory you have your users in, that's where you're going to put. And you can do a quick test connection. Doesn't take very long to test that out. Make sure you get a green checkbox, which I did. So you scroll down, there's another place to put the user search base. This is where you're going to sync again. I'm going to come out and sync your users to. Make sure that your users are in that folder, and that's where you're going to put your users in Active Directory. So in this example, we're going to use some filter settings in LDAP. So we don't want all of our users to sync. By default, that's what's set. We're going to use one of the settings within the Active Directory user and set that. So in this case, we're going to use the department settings. So if you go into the user in Active Directory, you're going to see for department, I put AP in that particular box. So it will only pull those users in. So the same thing with the service area. We're going to assign everybody with the department AP with the service area of like I said, with this particular service area. You can do different ones if you want. We're also going to apply a mask, so it's going to create a phone number based on what's in Active Directory. So take that mask, and then we're going to do, put a plus in front of it, and then 11 digits. That's going to be their number that's sitting on the top of their phone. So that's what number they're going to get configured with. And then role settings, we can't do that yet. It's all going to be assigned to the employee type. And that's pretty much it for the configuration. As you can tell, you can look at different settings. You can save the configuration file if you want. This is everything that's going to be configured when you hit the apply button. So all your service templates that are going to be created, your user roles, all that different kinds of things. So we're going to hit apply, and then you're going to hit apply again. Just one more time, just to make sure that you want to do it. It is going to take about 3 to 6 minutes to push all those config to the users. So at that time, you'll start seeing the system start going through and configuring each one of these items. Since it's going to take, like I said, it's going to take 3 to 6 minutes, we're going to go ahead and kind of speed that up and get that quickly done, so we don't have to sit here and watch these things spin and start checking off as they complete. But just sit back, go get you a drink, whatever, and then wait for this to finish, and then we'll continue to move on through. So real quickly, we're going to move right through, and just like that, all the green check marks are there. We're almost finished with the provisioning. It's still doing a little bit of checks, and then right now we see the end. So it's completed. You can do a few different things. You can go straight to importing users or whatever, add other service areas or whatever. It'll take you right back to that page. So the initial provisioning wizard is done, so we're going to click done. And then what we're going to do, there's a few settings that some rules within Prime Collaboration Provisioning that get set at the user import or the device input. So what we're going to do is we're going to configure those particular rules. So when a new user gets done, gets configured, it will configure this stuff. So administration, then rules. And then what you're going to do is select domain, which is the one that you just created in the provisioning manager, the wizard, and we're going to click DCloud. And then there's a bunch of rules you can configure, as you can see here. We're going to configure 3 of them. The first one we're going to configure is the call manager password. This is the user. If you didn't have LDAP integrated, then this is the password the user would get into their user page. But we're going to go ahead and set that just to show you what you could do. But if they're in with LDAP, they're going to use LDAP synchronization or authentication. So we're going to hit save on there, and then what we're going to do is this Unity subscriber password. So this is the PIN number that the user would punch in when they call into Unity Connection. You can set that here if you, and then they can always change it later. So we're going to save that. And then lastly, we're going to set the web access password. This is basically the password that you would use in your Jabber devices. Like I said, if this wasn't LDAP synced or whatever, this is the password they would use to connect into the voicemail tab in your Jabber clients. And that's what the web access password does. So we're going to configure that. So this is what is going to be configured for the user at creation. So a few more things we're going to configure as well. We're going to configure, assign the users to a different user type. In the wizard, by default, it sets everybody to employee, but we're going to make sure, that everybody we import is going to be included to the employee. So we're going to make the department AP, so we can pull those 4 users in that we've configured earlier in Active Directory. So we're going to save that. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to the service templates that were automatically configured based on the wizard. So we created these 4 default templates that can get applied to your users. And the first one is the Cisco Jabber template. You can look in there and you can see all the different configurations that it does for the Jabber desktop template for every Jabber user desktop that gets configured. Then you're going to we're going to go into line template and scroll down to the voicemail section. So everybody, if they have a no busy when internal people call them just for the lab type, we're going to choose send them to voicemail for no answer, and then we're going to choose the voicemail, the calling search space to hit that voicemail pilot, which in this case is the base CSS. So we're gonna configure that. You can configure the other ones if you want, or whatever you want for the new users, but we're just gonna keep it like that and hit save. The next thing that we're gonna take a look at is the user service template, and this is different settings for the user account. So you've got IM and presence settings, user profiles, all those different kinds of things that you could set for a user in Communications Manager. One thing we want to do is we want to add a couple extra groups and roles. CTI enable is always something that you probably want to set for a user, and then this connected transfer and conference one is more for 9900 series phones. So we're going to put those both in there, and we're going to hit save. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new template. So we picked a number of different Jabber templates we could do. We're going to create one for the iPad. This is actually going to turn on voice services. So for the iPad, so they can actually log in, make phone calls, receive phone calls, and things like that. So we're going to choose a few different things here. Communications Manager, got an endpoint. We're going to choose the Jabber for tablet for the iPad. You wouldn't need to do this if you just wanted chat capabilities, but if you want phone, then you'll need to do the Jabber for iPad template. So we're going to assign it to a service area, which we just did. Richardson, we just created that. Of course, we want to set the calling search space. We want to make sure that that's correctly, so when they do make calls, they'll actually make the correct search space. We're going to just choose base. If they wanted different search spaces, we can choose that. But pretty much, most of the stuff we're going to use is default. We're going to allow them to edit the configuration, so go into settings and change some things. So we'll just make that enabled, and then we're going to hit save on there. So that's just the new template, Jabber template. We'll create that. Lastly here, what we're going to do is we're going to go to the employee role. This is the ones we're going to import. We're going to import 4 users, and this is what you can apply to the role. So we're going to scroll all the way down to actually the service template assignment. So this is what gets applied to a user when they are imported. And these different services here, like line, user service, Jabber, voicemail, so those are all going to be auto provisioned. So we're going to make sure that each one of these are saying yes. So we have to check the box, choose the template, hit save. User services, we're going to make sure we edit that, check the box to make sure it says yes, and then choose the template here. For Jabber, there's 2 Jabbers that show up here, 2 Jabber templates. You can only choose one. Most of the time it'll probably be the desktop template. You probably wouldn't want to set everybody for iPad if they don't have an iPad voice service. So definitely, most people have desktop templates. We're going to hit save, and that way everybody will get configured these services when we do the import. Okay, so that's really the last thing that we're going to do on Prime Collaboration provisioning before we import the users. But there are a few settings that we're going to have to do in Communications Manager. They want to get kind of set up and prepared before we do the import. So we're gonna pull open another tab or go back to the tab for Communications Manager that we had up, and right now it's on the serviceability page, so we're going to have to go to the Unified CM Administration page. And since it's been quite a bit of time since we've been here, we're going to have to re-log in to the page. And the first thing what we're going to do is enable phone services. So for some reason in this particular version of Prime Collaboration provisioning, it will go out and delete the already automatic provisions phone services and create new ones. When they did that, they didn't enable it. So when you go click the voicemail button, it won't work. So in this particular version of communications and providing provisioning, hopefully they fix that in the next version, that you're going to have to go into each one of these services like the voicemail and check this box for enable. So we're going to hit save, and that way the voicemail button will work. So unfortunately this is something you have to do once, just because of the way they did the configuration, the push. So we'll have to go into each one of these services, enterprise subscription services, and check the box for enable. So we'll do personal directory. We did missed calls. Make sure we hit save, and it just go through each one of these. We've got like I said, missed calls here, so we'll have to check each box, hit save. Normally you wouldn't have to do this, but there was something in the push that deleted the already provisioned phone services, deleted them or something, and then created brand new ones, and then they didn't check the box to enable. So something that was found during the creation using this particular, it's pretty easy fix. But if you find that you hit the voicemail button and it doesn't work, or it says service is not configured, you want to make sure that you go into the phone services here and enable them. Now we have those enabled, what we're going to do is configure the SIP profile for Jabber. So device settings, and then the SIP profile. And we'll click find, and these are some pre-configured SIP profiles that PCP did. And what we're going to do is we're going to allow desktop sharing. So in order to allow desktop sharing, we're going to check this box to allow presentation sharing with BFCP. So we're going to hit save, and that will enable desktop sharing between Jabber clients. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to check the self-provisioning settings. And in the lab, we don't care about authentication. You may want to in your environment and provide an authentication code, so not just everybody will be able to do it. But in this environment, in a lab or whatever, I really don't care about authentication. So we're just going to check no authentication required, and then click save. So that way we don't have to put in a special code or anything like that, or configure that. Next thing we're going to do is we're kind of modify the universal device templates. And this is, again, configured because PCP configured a PCP universal device template, and we're going to configure some of the settings, default settings. We're going to reconfigure it so when a user does a self-provisioning, this is what is going to get configured. So we're going to click on the link on the one that PCP configured. We're going to change some things like device description. You can see there's a default description that it puts in for every device. We're going to change it just a little bit and put the first name in the device description. We're also going to make sure that we put like a space here, because you really don't notice it. You will notice it once the device gets configured. You'll notice that there weren't any spaces. So different things that you can set by default. So first name, last name, user ID, sounds good here. So for the device pool, it defaults to the default device pool, so we want to make sure they put in the correct device pool for Richardson. And then what we're going to do is go down to the line. You can see there's a speed dial that gets automatically configured to every phone in here, so that will be on the phone for auto provisioning. But there's another setting within the line. We're going to hit edit, and then what we want to do is the line label. So when they look at their phone, they'll see their name, first name, space, last name. So that way they'll know it's their phone or whatever, whose phone it is. So we're going to do that for the line label as well as the caller ID. So when someone receives a call, they'll see that it comes from first name dot last name, whatever, or space last name. That's pretty much it for that. We're going to hit save. So that's the universal device template, something new that came along with Communications Manager. The Provisioning Manager uses this, or Prime Provisioning uses this. Now we'll go into the universal line template and kind of do some configuration changes from the defaults, such as line description. We're going to go ahead and modify that. So the line description will say first name, space, last name. Then we'll hit OK, and then voicemail profile, we're going to set that to the configuration, the PCP configured one. And alerting name, we're also going to do this as well. I know we did this in PCP before, but this is for newly provisioned users that are going to use the auto provisioning feature of Communications Manager. So we're setting those settings up right now. So that looks good. Space, okay. Let's see, we're going to do some call forward settings as well. So for busy, no answer, whatever, you can set those here for auto provisioned users. So we're going to change it to go to voicemail, and then of course the CSS that can see the voicemail pilot. So we're going to set that, and then we're going to hit save. Next thing we're going to configure is the common device profile that gets applied to all phones. So there's some common settings that every phone can get, and that's what we're going to configure here. So device settings, common phone profile, and then we're going to click find. Select the default profile. You can create a new one if you want, but we're just going to use the default one that gets installed for Communications Manager. First thing we're going to change is the Cisco camera. So by default, like a 9971, the USB camera isn't enabled, so when you try to do a video call, it won't work. Next, let's do a find in the list here, RTCP. That is for desktop sharing, so between Jabber clients. We enabled the BFCP setting in the SIP profile. You also need this checked, and then we also want to make sure that video calling is enabled and checked. That way, anything checked in here overrides whatever is in if it's not checked in the actual device itself. So they'll use these settings. Lastly, what we want to do is set the like the company photo directory. Basically, it'll pull, if you have this set up, it'll pull like pictures and then use those on your phones to show pictures on like the DX650 or something like that. You'll be able to see those if you have like a share where all your photos are. So in our case, we do have that here, so we're going to check that and make sure it's enabled. That's pretty much all we're going to do with the common profile, and we'll hit save. Last thing we're going to configure on Communications Manager before we import our users is the Jabber config file. So this is something optionally you can do, and it'll push out to your Jabber clients, and you can do some different configurations and such. Just for an example, this is the config file I'm going to upload to Communications Manager, so it'll push out, so we can open it up in Notepad, and then you can see there's just a bunch of different tags and things in here, setting maybe some plugins or links to different things you want to show up in Jabber, and we'll look at these when we register a client. But you don't really need to know this much. I mean, there's documentation on how to configuration, but there's a nice little auto config tool that you could go to, and I'll put the link up here, and you can actually use that to generate these files. So you don't really need to know too much about it. It'll do it for you, which is pretty nice. So once you get your file ready to go, we're going to have to upload this to the TFTP directory, which is in the OS administration page, and then we're going to log in to that and get that going, and then we're going to upload this file so it'll push out the configuration here. Alright, so this page is going to load, and then we're going to go to software upgrades and then TFTP file management, and then we're going to click upload file. So we're going to browse to that jabber-config file. We put it here, and we'll just upload it. It shouldn't take too long. File uploaded successfully. And then anytime you do any kind of uploads to the TFTP server, you have to go and restart the TFTP server. So we're going to do that. We got to go back into serviceability. Again, we're going to have to log in again, because anytime you switch between OS administration or serviceability or Communications Manager, you got to re-log in, different username and password to log into those. So we're logging in, and what we're going to do is going to go to Tools, Control Center, Feature Services, and then pick Communications Manager. So we're going to look at the services for Communications Manager, and then we're going to restart that TFTP service, because it won't push out until you restart the service. So Cisco TFTP is the service. We're just going to click restart. It's going to take a few seconds to restart, so we'll pause and come right back here in a second. And then the page refreshes after about 30 seconds or so. And then there's one more service we're going to restart. That is the self-provisioning IVR service. Now this is the reason why we're restarting this is because when we push this config out, there's a CTI route point that is configured for auto provisioning your phones, and that is not registered right now. So in order to get it to register, we're going to restart the self-provisioning IBR setting, and this is going to take, like I said, another 30 minutes or so. So we'll just pause that and then come back real quick. And just like that, the service has been restarted. It took about 30 seconds or so to get that restarted. So that's the last thing we're going to configure on Communications Manager. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to Prime Collaboration Provisioning, the server, and we're going to import our users now that we got everything kind of pre-set up with our different templates and things like that. So deploy user provisioning. That'll bring this page up here, and then we're going to do an import of our users. So we're going to click Import Users, and it brings up this particular box, and we're going to do from LDAP. We're going to pull it from LDAP, and then domain. We set all this stuff up earlier, so DCloud domain, and of course we got to click the import button. It takes depending on how many users you have in your LDAP server, it's going to take quite a bit of time. Since we only have about only four, that's going to be imported is pretty quick. So as you can see that it says successfully completed, and then if we hit the restart or refresh button here, you can see we have 4 users set up. So what we're going to do is right now what it's doing is it's configuring those services we set up earlier to do the auto provisioning of all the different services. So on this particular user here, you can see it's already starting to configure some services already. We do a refresh, it's still doing configuration. So if we click on the order number, you can actually see there's something that's already been completed. So we've already got a line and completed for this user, endpoint, Jabber desktop endpoint, and then we've got the voicemail service that's still in progress. So it's still configuring a voicemail, but these things have automatically started configuration on Communications Manager, Unique Connection, IM and Presence. So you didn't have to do anything but import it because of those settings we set up earlier. These things are getting auto provision automatically and any new user. So like I said, you could pick whatever services you want to happen to get configured at import. So this one is complete. You can see all of them say complete. If you do a refresh, the status here is complete. So that order is complete, no errors, so everything's good to go. This particular user has all those devices now, or those services configured for them. So this one here doesn't have a service setup status. Oh, this one here has auto provisioning order is scheduled. So this one's going to be configured, but it's just not quite ready yet. So what it's going to do is continue to go through all these users and start configuring. Some of them already been completed, so we're all good there, all these different services. So what it's going to do is continue to hit all these 4 users, configure every single service that we told it to, and then you're going to have all these users ready to go. So these are almost ready to go. So we're going to go ahead, kind of pause it here because it's going to take a little bit of time to get the rest of these users configured, and then we're going to move on with the rest of it. Alright, so all of our users are completed, and easy way to just search for a new user is if you go up to this find box and you type in the username, it'll go directly to the user account where you can start adding services. So pretty quick little way of getting into the user. So what we're going to do is for this user Charles Holland, we're going to add a type of service. So we're going to hit continue. It's going to be a voice services for an iPad. So it's an endpoint service because it's considered an endpoint. And we're going to hit continue. Next thing we're going to do is select from the list. Now, as you can tell, this is not a full list of all the phones that are here, but because we chose those at the beginning, that's the only thing that shows up. So we're going to choose the Jabber for tablet device, and then for the device name, we're going to choose tab. We're going to put tab in front of it. It has to be tab, and then it doesn't matter what the next letters are, but at least if the device name is completely 15 characters. Jabber for tablet, and then Jabber for iPad is that service template we created earlier. So that looks good. Hit continue. Now we're going to assign it a line. Because we're doing this, we're getting voice services to this. We're going to choose a line. We could have did auto provisioning. It would have pulled in a number from that list. But since we already have a number assigned to Charles, we want to make sure that it coincides to the endpoint device that we've already configured that's in Active Directory already. So we already know what the number he needs to be configured, so we're going to do that. already. We're going to choose a line ourselves. And you're going to see here we got the directory number. We already have that set, so we don't want it to auto provision. And then for the you can tell up here it says shared line, so it's already been provisioned for Charles. So this is going to show as a shared line because there's another device that shares that particular line. So we're going to do the default line template. This is the template that gets created during that wizard. Hit continue. And then from here, we're going to confirm on the details. Everything looks good. We're going to hit confirm. And then lastly, we're going to click the OK button once it comes up. There we go. It tells you the order number. Order number 9. It's been released over here in the provisioning history, so you'll see that. And then you'll have the device right now is getting pushed to Communications Manager. Alright, now that all of our users have their lines and devices and things configured for them automatically through the provisioning of Prime Collaboration provisioning, what we're going to do is go take a look at Communications Manager. We're going to go back into the Unified CM Administration page, and then what we'll do is we'll check out the phones that have already auto-provisioned or configured through Provisioning Manager. So we'll click Device Phones, click Find, and then you can see now we have some devices that are there because Provisioning Manager configured it, and then we have some auto-provisioned phones that I have in the lab right now. So we see that they've already got numbers assigned to them. This IP communicator I've already got signed up has a number. So as you can see, these are the number range that was configured through the wizard when Prime Provisioning set that up at the beginning through the wizard. So that is already auto-provisioned and is ready to go. But the last thing you need to do before you can do the provisioning is you have to go into the user account and set an ID that they're going to use to provision their phone. So for this user here, we're going to set the ID to be their last 4 digits of their phone number, which is 6050. And then also we're going to scroll down to make sure we're going to assign a primary line to assign. So primary extension here. So we're going to make sure right now there's only one extension to this user, but we want to make sure that it's set in this user configuration page. So we're going to set that, and then we're going to save. Alright, so now we're going to auto-provision our IP communicator phone. I'm having a little issues with the audio, so I'm gonna do it visually first, and then we'll do it on another phone that's hard phone. So we're going to hit the speed dial. Right now it's saying welcome, enter your self-provisioning ID, which is what we configured it. It's going to be 650, so we're going to put 650 and then enter the pound key or hit the pound key. And then it's going to say, are you sure this is the number you want to enter? Are you sure? Hit pound again, and then it's going to hit, and we're going to hit pound, and it's going to say, okay, we'll now reboot with the new configuration. Is basically what it's saying. Like I said, I will once this reconfigures and comes back up, I will do it on one of my hard phones here, so you can actually hear the prompts that are going on. So phone's rebooting. And then once it comes up, it's going to assign the line settings, everything that we set up earlier with the device, the universal device templates and stuff that will be on this phone. So it's coming up now, configuring it, downloading the list, and then now we could see that it has a number assigned to Kelly Melby, and everything's good to go. So let me do this on the hard phone so you can actually hear the prompts, and on one of my hard phones here. So. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to register one of my hard phones so you can actually hear what the prompts are. And since we couldn't hear it with the IP communicator phone, we're going to go ahead and do that now. So we're going to hit the speed dial.
Self-provisioning identification number followed by the pound key.
So self-provisioning ID number, which is the 6016 number, and then we'll hit pound.
You have entered 6016. Press the pound key to confirm, or this device will now restart with a new extension. Goodbye.
And that's pretty much it. That's what you didn't hear. So I just want to make sure that you guys could hear that. So this thing's going to reboot and going to re-register as for Adam McKenzie here. So, alright, so bringing up Jabber here, we're going to go ahead and get this registered as well to test that out. So we're going to log in with our A. McKenzie user, Adam McKenzie, and log in with the just the email address. We have DNS settings set up, so it automatically finds the services. So you can set that up. You can hit continue. It's going to go out and search DNS to find like the UDS and everything to find the services. So it did find it. So now we can put in our actual password for this particular user, and we can say automatically sign in as soon as you open it, and then hit continue. Now, because we don't have the certificates installed, we're going to get these pop-ups, but you can go through the process of doing certificate installs. It's kind of a long, drawn-out process to get these things installed, so I didn't do it on this one, so we're just going to hit accept. We'll have to do it once every time you log in. You don't have to accept it every time, but in this particular case, you just hit accept once and it won't pop up again. But if you want to prevent that the first time, you'll have to install their certificates on all the servers and go through that process. So server or the system has logged in to the Jabber client, so you'll see here that you got directory pictures. You also have these little tabs that was in that Jabber-config file, so you can click on that. You pull up the DCloud Twitter page. I've got the tab for the Cisco.com main page here. It doesn't really look too well on this little screen, but you get the idea of what you can do with that. So we're going to attach the voicemail service to this, so we're going to put in the username, password into the voicemail, and we'll get that up there and hit apply. Again, another certificate. If we had the certificates installed, then we wouldn't get this pop-up. But you don't have to do this once. It won't do it. It won't ask you again once you accept it once. So now we see that we are, in fact, logged into the voicemail server here. So we got visual voicemail set up. Okay, and with that, I will conclude this video. So, as you can see with this new feature with PCP 10.5, you can easily deploy a BE6K or even a BE7K system. The version of Prime Collaboration, the standard version that I'm using in this, is free to download from Cisco.com. And also don't forget about for you Cisco partners and employees, you can actually go through this entire lab, hands-on lab, anytime you want right now on dcloud.cisco.com. So I hope you enjoyed this video and maybe even learned something today. So I want to thank you for watching, and as always, thanks for choosing Cisco.